it's cloudy and gray and storms are, about impending doom. And it's like, meanwhile, you go outside and it's like the birds are chirping. Like, life is all about perspective. And depending on, what your perspective is very deterministic in terms of how you view things. I think if you can change your perspective by like the inputs of like whatever that is, and cool news being one of them, it changes your outlook and, and how you see things. So I totally agree with you.
Nice. I appreciate that a lot. When I was reading a little bit about you, I had heard that it's been accessibility has been a very close cause for you because you have a family member who has experienced issues.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I was probably about 18, my dad was diagnosed with something called retinitis pigmentosa, which is a degenerative eye disease. With blindness, 50% of people who are blind or have low vision were born with normal vision. And that was certainly the case of my father. He was kind of in his late 40s when he was diagnosed with RP. We grew up in New Jersey. My dad was a salesman, drove around all the tri-state area, selling stuff for the computer industry, components, resistors, things like that. And then was diagnosed with RP and, was starting to all of a sudden face the idea of losing his vision. My family and I, had no idea what disability meant. Nobody else in our family had something like this. We really didn't even know anybody who was blind or had low vision. And so, it changed a lot. I think my dad was obviously like taken aback by it, but really kind of had a very deterministic opinion that it wouldn't change who he was or the things that he would do. And so I was kind of in the stage where I was going to college and kind of moved out. My sister was also entering college years. So my parents sold their house in New Jersey, moved to New York. My dad got very active in like adaptive sports. And unfortunately, he passed away about 10 years ago from another disease not associated with his vision loss. But we decided to set up a
Sorry to hear that.
nonprofit in his memory. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But we had set up another nonprofit in his memory called InTandem. And so I'm on the board of a nonprofit called InTandem that does tandem cycling for people who are blind or have low vision. Every year we put out a guide dog calendar. So I showed you this, Trevor. I'll put one in the mail for you. So you have one for the
Thank
coming
you.
year. Yeah, yeah. And so we do that. And that's just kind of part of, so, like many things that happen when you lose your sight, access to like sports and working out and, physical activity becomes a limit. And so, he was always very active in running and cycling and adaptive sports. And so he had wanted to start this organization when he was alive and unfortunately didn't get an opportunity to do that. So we just kind of carried forward his vision and it's been in existence for about 10 years. And we help about 500 blind New Yorkers ride bikes every week in Central Park. It's a lot of fun. Probably something maybe for even another story. My
Hmm.
path with it kind of went into the fact that I've been in technology for 20 years, very focused on, all sorts of like software as a service and video streaming, and I've built companies and I've sold them. And even though I was very connected to the disabled community and very connected with technology, I really didn't kind of understand the impact that technology had with disability and was really completely unaware that like literally 90% of the internet is inaccessible for so many people.
Whoa.
So, yeah, so if you're blind, have low vision, have neuro, diverse issues or hearing loss, a lot of the internet could be closed off to you. And so I just kind of found that very unacceptable. I mean, I've
Hmm.
been in this industry for so long and been able to make a career out of it and raise a family by doing stuff. And I just couldn't believe that a group of people that found themselves to be so progressive as the folks in the tech industry, would also create something that had so many barriers. And that's when I founded Inclusive about 6 years ago with the idea that it's not so much that people want to be uh, excluding folks. It's just that developers, similar to myself before my dad lost his vision, aren't really connected with people with disability, probably have not met somebody who has a disability, don't know how assistive technologies work. And so that was kind of the idea. We started the business and have been growing it ever since. It's a
Wow,
long answer to your question, I think, but
that's a great answer.
it
Yeah, thank you.
is.
Yeah, I know that also companies may be putting themselves in a liability or at risk by not accommodating. You want to talk about that?
That's right. Yeah. So, just like if you go into a building and you see a ramp, or if you go to an elevator and you see braille, on the buttons, all of that has kind of been built into law underneath a concept called public accommodation. So within the U.S., we have something called the Americans with Disabilities Act. It was brought into law in 1990 by George Walker Bush, the first Bush. And, the American with Disabilities Act just basically states that if you're serving the public, you can't discriminate with somebody based on, a disability. And there's a lot of case law that basically states that the internet is a place of public accommodation, which means that the rules that you follow that dictate why buildings have to be accessible dictate also that websites have to be accessible. So last year, there were roughly about 4,000 lawsuits across the US. They happened mostly in California, New York, New Jersey, and Florida, but really like anywhere anyone can get sued. And so if your website doesn't meet these standards, you could face, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in uh,
In what ways are you able to integrate tools into the website to make them more accessible?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, really what ends up happening is we don't have to integrate any tools. So, there's an organization called the W3C, which is the Worldwide Web Consortium, right? Think of them almost as like the internet, police officers, right? But they're the ones that have developed, standards on how the web works. So, like, not just for accessibility, but really like how HTML should be structured. They kind of dictate like how all development on the web happens. And basically what they've developed is a set of guidelines called the Web Content Accessible Guidelines, the WCAG. And those WCAG guidelines basically dictate out about 96 different steps that software engineers and developers need to take to make their websites accessible. Those could be everything from making sure that your keyboard, your website is navigable via keyboard. So if you're blind or have low vision, instead of using a mouse, you use your keyboard to navigate. Ever gone through a website and hit like tab? You should be able to get to all the areas of the site using that. Also, if you maybe have like upper body mobility issues, right? You might not use a keyboard. So if you're confined to a wheelchair or have spinal cord um, injury or whatnot, you might not use a mouse, but use a keyboard to navigate. And so all of those guidelines kind of dictate out how you should be structuring your website to make it accessible. So you never have to add anything on top of it. The challenge is you have to understand how to kind of build it to meet those standards. And that's kind of the gap that we provide. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. No, it's a really good thing. When we look at the statistics for perhaps how many disabled people are online that have a demand for accessibility, maybe you could indicate here the scale of
Yeah.
the demand as well.
Yeah, sure. So, according to the latest census, roughly 20% of all people have identified with some form of disability. So that could be everything from like neurological disabilities like, dyslexia to autism to, other things along those lines to, very, visible disabilities like, blindness or, physical disabilities to invisible disabilities that, might be going on with somebody you're just not aware of. So, and again, like anything, not everybody wants to be identified as being disabled. In Forrester's latest research, again, they stated that like roughly about between 18 and 20% of US population identifies with a disability. That doesn't include other demographics that might use accessible features, right? So my mother is in her, I won't say like late 70s, early 80s, but she doesn't identify as disabled, but uses a lot of accessibility features on her phone, right? It's set to the maximum screen size length. Oh, or if you've ever even used like Hey Siri or Pinch and Zoom or enlarge stuff, all of those things are based on accessibility elements. So while the number of people with disability is huge, the ancillary benefits of the people who could benefit from disability is enormous. I mean, one of the things we always talk about is this idea of something called the curb cut effect. And I don't know, Trevor, if you've ever heard of that before, but the curb cut effect basically states like, if you've ever walked on a sidewalk and you've seen like the curb cut at the corner, right? That was made for people with wheelchairs to get on and off very easily, right? But as a father of three, I could tell you if you ever use a stroller, like those things are really helpful, or if you see like, an old woman pushing a cart, or the mail carrier, pushing a mail bag, like all of those things are incredibly valuable for everybody.
There. So I could see
Yeah.
also the red
Yeah.
in the curb cut as well is an accessibility assist, right? Like with is it
Yeah.
for the blind?
So for if you're blind, you could see. But again, also those things have like or better traction elements. So if it's people, don't slip and fall, right? So when you're starting to build for accessibility, there's a huge amount that you're opening yourself up for. And, I think Forrester put like the disposable income of people with disability at like almost I think it was like $500 billion in the US, like $500 billion of disposable income within this, characteristic of 20% of the US population. So you think about businesses out there that are trying to like increase market share or, add to people, if there's think about how much you use technology for today. It's like integrated in literally everything that you do. And to think that, there's a lot of people out there that, might be closed out from that is really what our mission is to do to close that gap.
It also makes me wonder if advertising is sometimes tailored to be accessible as well, because when you say that there's a disposable income, perhaps like it's also perhaps a market for some people to consider. I don't know if that is something that everybody thinks about, but
No, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's been a few campaigns that have really kind of, highlighted that kind of factor, right? That, that we're not just looking at people with disability as like a source of charity, right? Like that these are active members of our society that are doing great things and, should be, talked to and catered to as general consumers, right? Just like everybody else. I think that's exactly the right. I think that's the exact right idea. But you're right. A lot of advertising is actually closed off to people. So if you've ever seen, if you think of like a banner ad, right, and that banner ad might say like 50% off, that percent off is on an image, right? So if you're using a screen reader that just uses the text, you might not be able to understand that there's actually advertisement associated with that image, and AI might not understand the context of that advertisement or that sale. And so, yeah, disability and advertisement is a big opportunity of growth.
wow. When I was looking into inclusive, I had seen that there was somebody that worked for you that I believe may have had a visual impairment that was explaining ways in which they would interact with the site and how many sites don't use it. So it's very good to see that you have people that have real world experience of working with these things to try and really make sure that people understand them. And this is good.
Yeah. Yeah, we hire a lot of people from the disabled community. I mean, it's really important to us, and that's obviously they do a lot of like retesting, but I think it's important for us to have people in all sorts of our operation, like from our project management to sales, that are, part of the disabled community and the community that we serve. In fact, this year we were highlighted by an organization called Visions for their employer partner award. So there are great organizations out there like Visions or Helen Keller Association. In New York City, we have the mayor's office for people with disabilities, and they have a whole center there that's dedicated for helping find employment opportunities for people with disabilities. And as an employer of a small business, like having these organizations help us source great talent, it's like incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I see this visions. It's a red edge letter on the wall in the frame, like
Yeah,
around
yeah,
here.
yeah. So yeah,
That's
yeah,
nice. Wow, this is wonderful. Now that's a really special thing. I think that Vision probably. So you say they honored you for having diversity in your workforce for access like for
yeah,
disabled people
exactly.
essentially.
So we've been a big partner of theirs, and they've helped find us some talent, and yeah, we're just very honored to be working with them, and they, they honored us for being a partner of theirs in that process.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Like, I think that it's very important to highlight disabled people in the workforce as well, because I think you had mentioned before that some people sometimes take an approach of charity, but I do believe that there's so many out there that really want to be out there on the workforce that probably face so many challenges in maybe discrimination with employment or in other ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we think about it, right, I think as an employer, look, the challenge is that so many of the tools that people rely on, like, email or Word document, like, you have to have a concerted effort to making sure that, that stuff is accessible to your employees, and you have to open up those levels of accommodations for an employee. But look, at the end of the day, we all have a certain level of accommodation that, we take for granted, right? Like, I have electricity above me so I can see. That's theoretically an accommodation. I have a lot of blind employees that don't need electricity, to see, or lights. I mean, it's farcical, but it's kind of, it's true, right? Like, but that's kind of, the generalized, fact. We all have accommodations that we take for granted. And so obviously, like with hiring someone who's disabled, it might be more apparent in terms of the accommodations that you have to take. But on the same front, it's one of the things that we advocate around. It's like, you always are looking as an employer for somebody who's industrious, can problem solve. I mean, if just getting to work is a challenge in terms of problem solving, navigating, think about how easily you'll be able to navigate the challenges in the office. And that's what we found. We really get some incredible industrious people. We get people who are really dedicated to what it is that we're trying to do and the mission for our business. And I think it's a good showcase for our customers to show, like, just because somebody might identify as disabled doesn't mean that they're any less capable of doing something. It's just that they do it differently.
Of this, you're absolutely right. And what you say there is so important. I really want to make people hear that.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate it.
I wanted to talk about events. I know you had mentioned earlier in the call there was the tandem cycling event and different ones. Maybe we could talk about that.
Yeah. So, well, as our organization, we were just featured by Inc. or just best in for some of the work that we're doing around AI and social good. So that was a great event that kind of happened for us. In terms of events within in tandem, every year we run weekly events through that organization. So we put on cycling programs 3 times a week. And then every year there's something called the Five Borough Bike Tour, which is a 40-mile cycling event through New York City. So it's the only time where you could actually bike ride. They closed down the Verrazano Bridge or a portion of the Verrazano Bridge. So it's the only time you could actually bike from Brooklyn to Staten Island without, any encumbersome. So that's a big fundraising event for us at InTandem. We do.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I want to learn like how tandem works. So I'd imagine that it's two people up on the bike.
Yeah, so it's a normal bike, and basically it's not a normal bike. There's 2 seats. There's a what's called a captain in the front. So that's the sighted person who sits in the front, obviously, and they're kind of controlling where the bike goes and the gear shifting associated with it. And the person in the rear is actually called the stoker. And if you think of like stoking an engine, that's where stoker comes from. And they're the engine of the bike. So the stoker is the one who generates the momentum to keep the bike going. And so each one has a unique skill. And the person in the back is the person who's visually impaired. And there's 2 wheels with 2 seats. So it's still a 2-wheeled bike, and you have to balance on the bike like you would normally balance. But it's essentially a bike with 2 seats, and there, maybe I can find a good picture of it for you here.
It's starting to become familiar around the beach and the boardwalk. I may have seen some tandem bikes
Yeah,
before.
yeah, you probably have definitely seen it. Here, this is probably a good one. I don't know if you can kind of.
Oh yes, yes.
Right, so that's a tandem cycle, and that person in the back is our stoker, and the person in the front is, has vision and can pedal. Right. And I think the thing that, I think a lot of people find interesting is, when 2 people are going by on the bike, nobody necessarily knows that one person is without sight, or, you know what I mean? It's like, it's a very, tandem cycling kind of takes a person out of their own disability, and just puts them as a team together for doing something. Both people have a very important responsibility, right? If I steer the bike wrong, it's not going to go in the right place. And if the person in the back isn't pedaling, we're not going to go anywhere. And so, they both have, a real responsibility, and it's a partnership with one another. And so that's kind of, it's not about ability or disability. It's just about 2 people getting on a bike together and cycling.
Love that. I really would love to learn more about it as well.
Yeah, yeah. We're just getting to the end of our season. It's a little, because we're in New York. It's like winter. We tend to shut down, and then come like March-ish time frame, we start getting the bikes back out. But yeah, I'm happy to put you in touch with our executive director and um, person who really runs it. And when we get back out cycling, it's a great time and makes for some great content as well.
That's wow. Yeah, that I think that it really connects deeper than I mean, also it's something that your father loves.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was that's the thing, it's fine. It's funny. My dad loved to, yeah, we put a little honorary in here for him. I'll show you. There. This gentleman is my dad, and this was his captain, who's still active in the organization. He's the chairman of InTandem. So that's a gentleman by the name of Mark Carhart, and that's my dad, Artie. So it's nice, like 11 years after he passed, or almost 12 years after he passed away, that uh, people get to know him and get to know about what he believed in. And, we're still kind of carrying forward his legacy. He loved meeting people. And so I always think like it's crazy, people, so long after he passed away, still get to know who he is.
And he brings people together through this, yeah. I'd imagine that
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
friendships are
You brought
forged.
us together. Yeah. You brought us
That's right.
together.
That's right. Nah, that's it's really amazing what you do and how you can help people through your work. I think that it's very commendable. I really respect.
Thank you. No, well, we need folks like you to shine a light on it. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Well, as this is our first call, and it's an honor to meet you and to know
No,
the good and
likewise.
noble things that you do. I would love to continue to further on through 26 as there's more events for in tandem, and
Yeah.
I'd really love to see it. And yeah, that's a great thing. I know that
Yeah,
they're
I would love that.
wonderful. I know that we're here around the end of our time, so I hope that I'm not keeping you. And if there was anything else that you wanted to cover, we could highlight it.
No, let me make sure I get your address, because I want to make sure I send you out a calendar. And then do I have
Yeah,
your email? Because I think we just spoke through Antonia on, through our stuff. I see you're on LinkedIn, so maybe we'll connect through LinkedIn or Coast Press is there.
yeah, yeah. That's fine.
Oh, I see
Yeah,
you
I
here.
can give.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, Trevor Smith. Yeah, you'll see me there. We've been trying to keep our LinkedIn updated and linked to WordPress, so it should be posting more through there. But we had a link break in it, so I have to update it. We've got some other stuff that we've launched that have made it to LinkedIn.
Okay. And I could just send you, why don't I just send you my email in the chat, and then this
Yeah,
way,
that's
if you
great.
don't
Yeah,
mind
because
sending me your email and address, that would be great.
yeah, I am Trevor at thecoastpress.com. Um, I,
Okay,
I I
easy.
have my email up. I could send you an email, or if well, you sent it through the chat, right? Let's see here.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a studio. I had sent some things out there because it's like we just moved in there this year, and for some reason the mailroom it's not working. So I'm just giving you my personal address.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
We didn't discuss restaurants and retail brands. So
Yeah.
it says like the hidden 88 crisis hitting restaurant and retail brands. I know that restaurants are very public serving business, and so the ADA accessibility it absolutely comes into play with how there's access physically into the place and perhaps in seating arrangements. So it sounds like through the software and the website these brands are affected.
Well, yeah. So basically, if you think about all the areas where you kind of transact with a company, right? So in restaurants, right? How many times do you go online or make a reservation or order through their website? Or even if you're there and you're doing like self-service checkout through a kiosk, right? And
Mhm.
Trevor, you wouldn't believe it, but literally like 90% of all of those don't work for
Whoa.
screen readers or people with disabilities, right? So like literally, or imagine if you have to go to a hotel, right? And you need to book a room,
Mhm.
that room reservation system again, when you're selecting a date, like check in, check out, most of those don't work with accessibility features. You're
That's
booking
not good.
travel. No, like, so I think a lot of people, so the industries that are most affected by like ADA lawsuits and litigations obviously are like restaurants, hotels, airlines, right? Because those are the ones where e-commerce websites, right? So imagine if you're trying to buy something online and, the form that you're trying to fill out doesn't have the appropriate label so you know what fields to put in where, right? Or maybe you made a mistake somewhere in a form and it's giving you an error message, but you don't know exactly where within that, it's actually going on to. So all of those things are things that, are challenges for people with disabilities. And there's like groups of people out there that understand those limitations and are kind of, for lack of a better term, serial litigators that go out and find organizations and target them for lawsuits. And so while that's kind of like the impetus for a lot of our customers to maybe start working with us, we really try to make it so that they understand the bigger plight of like why accessibility matters and the customers that they're potentially gaining by investing in these types of services. And so as an
Right.
organization, we work with them to really make sure that it not just kind of meets compliance standards, but really works for people with disabilities. And then we ongoingly check it to make sure that they're staying accessible over time.
This is pretty good. We had discussed AI a little bit, and so how is AI reshaping and sometimes harming accessibility?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a really great question. So, in terms of harming, I think people rely on AI too much, right? And just like you've seen AI hallucinate on simple things, AI hallucinates in terms of like, especially like, there's some things called like an overlay, and maybe you've seen that where there's like a little accessibility icon on the corner of a website.
Yes, like a blue icon on the right side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And people rely on those sites, they're called overlays, to essentially like automatically fix the accessibility issues. And the problem is that just like anything with AI, if it's unchecked, it completely, can spoil the effect, right? And in many cases, it doesn't improve the website, but it actually makes it worse. And then the biggest challenge is if you kind of rely only on these AI solutions, the people that are the serial litigators out there, the ones that just sue people, know that they don't work, so they actually target you. So here's a company that kind of says, well, I don't know anything about accessibility. I'm going to use this widget because it sounds right, right? Like makes sense. And then not only are they not fixing anything for people with disabilities, but they're also kind of putting a spotlight on themselves from potential suers out there that their site's inaccessible. So that's kind of one of the ways that AI harms. Where AI helps is one of the challenges is developers don't really understand how to code properly, right? So we use a lot of people to just identify what the issues are, but then like I could show you in our software just to kind of give you an example of kind of what we do. Yeah, so each one of these little squares here is a website that we monitor, right? And this is kind of like a view of the software that we sell people. So rather than kind of like automatically fixing things, we really try to show customers visibly like where they are in terms of accessibility. So how things mirror for color, color contrast, keyboard, like things that people with disabilities use. We conduct this audit and then we show customers exactly where the issues are. Where we've used AI and I think really successfully is so for example, like what we do is like this is an issue that we found on a customer's website, right? So in some cases, if you remember, I said like you have to enlarge like the actual image. Like people who have low vision or maybe some people who are elderly, they might increase a screen size by 200%, right? What happens when you increase the screen size by 200%, lots of things get cut off, right? Or maybe
Right.
become malformed. So what we've done is you see here on this little screen here, it's something called AI Assist.
Sorry about that. I was just opening up
No
another
worries.
display. I see it much clearer
Yeah,
now.
yeah. So when you click AI Assist, what it does is it actually reads what this issue is in context.
Yeah.
And then it's something called a custom RAG, which is an AI like knowledge base. So it's literally 6 years of our accessibility audits all
Hmm.
compiled into like a specific AI engine, right? And reads it and shows customers exactly how to fix it, right? So we're
Right.
not trying to like automatically mask accessibility issues. What we really try to do is say, look, these things aren't that hard, but if you have the knowledge to do it, right? So we've built this AI engine that sits on top of it that really just kind of says, hey, not only have we helped you find it, but we're going to show you exactly how to fix it. They use our AI to do that. And then once they've implemented it, you can see here there's this little status which says closed. This is us going back and retesting the issue manually with those. Like, I think you saw a video of us like retesting something. So we retest with people with disabilities to actually making sure that it meets ADA standards. So AI is great in the middle. I think it's really harmful if it's kind of in the entire process left unchecked.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, wow, that's great. So you have really good project management, like in how you would implement and go through certain things. So that's very
Yeah.
very good. I'm sure
And then we
businesses love
actually
that.
go back every week. Yeah. And we monitor the website to make sure that there's no new accessibility issues, right? So, like,
Mm,
this is an example of like, you can see here, like, this week, sometime back in, February of 2024, somebody pushed some code that broke accessibility. And so then we went back, found what the issue was, and was able to resolve it. But to your point, I
phenomenal.
appreciate that. Yeah, we really make it easy for customers to know where the accessibility issues are, what the status of them are, and that they're not remaking new accessibility issues as people add content to the website.
So I can see, and it's very apparent now that by having a real disabled testers, it dramatically changes the outcome because it seems like you're having a routine checks on the website, and if issues flare up from your like real world testers, it flags it and it gets resolved. Is that right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so one thing, it's obviously it's protective for our customers, right? So for our customers who are fearful of being sued, the fact that we use real world testers, it really eliminates that issue. And two, it really gives them the confidence to market to people with disabilities as well, because I think people are always afraid, like, well, is it really accessible? Do we know it's really accessible? We don't want to present it to a bunch of people and then find out, like, nobody wants to get like negative shame, right? Like,
Mm,
you tried to do something good and it backfired on you,
I see.
So,
So there could be companies that are here working with you because they've had um, PR issues, or they've been sued, or there's other reasons that lead them towards taking their ADA accessibility more seriously, right?
correct. Yeah, I mean, some value it, obviously, are core and they want to just do it because it's the right thing to do. I think, look, I'm here to meet people wherever they are, right? If they come to us because it's the right thing to do, that's great. If it's because they were sued and they don't want to get sued again, I mean, I also respect that opinion. I think it's our job as an organization that once we get them in, that we just make sure that they're not just trying to check a box and get it done, but they really do see the value of what it is that we're doing and the people that we serve.
Additionally, it's probably way easier to come into an issue with accessibility where even if somebody updates the website, it can completely throw it off. So there could have been
Yeah,
people
that's
that
right.
had
So
good
if you,
intentions to accommodate, and then through some fluke, they were in a situation where that was disrupted.
yeah, exactly. Like think of like a e-commerce company, right? They upload thousands of photos every day of new product images, and somebody forgets to put in alt text, you know?
Mm, yes,
And stuff like that happens. I mean, you're into content publishing, right? Like, sometimes you might forget to put in an alt text or a proper header or something along those lines, even
I
with the
see.
best intentions, you know,
Yeah,
you
each
can make a
image.
mistake.
So when we're using WordPress.com with our website, we
Yeah.
we do see alt text on different images, and so essentially we would need to put an alt text for each one, and
Yeah.
I can understand why it's important now, why we should be doing that.
Yeah. So a lot of people think it's just for SEO purposes, right?
Right, that's what it
And
read
certainly
like.
it's, yeah, and it's a bad descriptor, right? Like alt text. It should really say like, describe it for somebody who's blind, right? Or low vision, right? And then it all of a sudden opens up like, okay, I get it, you know?
Mhm. Now, does inclusive also have to help companies accommodate for people who have hearing issues? Is this also another angle that we haven't discussed? Because we talked about vision, um, and different neurological disabilities, but I understand that maybe hearing disabilities also need accommodations in how they're implemented.
Yeah, so basically, according to like the World Health Organization, the characteristics of disability really are like based on four principles, right? So people who are blind or have low vision, people who have physical or motor disabilities, right? So ambulatory issues, uh, people who are neurodiverse, and obviously people who have hearing or who are deaf or hard of hearing. And so, if you think of like a video on your website, right, that doesn't have a caption or a transcript, obviously those are areas where, a person who is or deaf of hard of hearing would have a challenge associated with it, right?
Yes. Yeah, and I had seen in movie theaters there was certain rooms in the theater that had like a CC option, and now I'm starting to reflect back on that. Even though I'd seen it in my childhood, I can understand why, but I don't know how those systems work. But it's something that I should research into.
Yeah, sometimes if you go into a theater, if they have a CC option, you could the person might be given a separate display that reads it out as the movie's going on. So they might get like a separate display either in their seats or, sometimes on their smartphones. Some theaters now have a kind of like an open caption where the captions are actually on the screen, right? But again, you think about it like the curb cut effect. Lots of people watch TV with open captions. Look at look at all social media video. Like all of it
Yes.
has video, like text on top of it of what people are saying. You know. So yeah, yeah. In fact, we're doing something at a cultural institution here in New York City where there's a new Bluetooth format called Auracast, which goes directly into a person's hearing aid. If people have, again, if you have a hearing aid or have low hearings, you go into like a crowded, noisy space, um, isolating like the audio speech from a specific piece of content might be difficult. And so there's a new Bluetooth standard called Auracast that can pair with any headphone, but is really meant for folks with hearing aids to be able to pair their hearing aid directly, to that audio signal.
Wow. I'm looking it up. I'm trying to get it to load. Is it spelled Auracast like Auracac? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Auracast, yes. Yeah, that's right. Auracast, yeah.
I see it. Auracast is trademarked. Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna be like if like you ever go to like a sports bar and you see like tons of TVs on but no sound, and we're going like, hey, I wish I could plug my sound into what that television is. Like, watch out, Auracast is gonna be able to allow you to do that.
Oh,
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's really, really crazy stuff. I can't wait to, and we're working with a very large museum, and they're kind of one of the first large ones to just to deploy it.
phenomenal. So they're working with you on this.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's gonna be.
That's
We're working
incredible.
with the Bluetooth. Yeah, we're working with it's the Bluetooth SIG, so the special interest group. So, Bluetooth it's an open standard basically that tons of companies adopt, right? So, companies have adopted this new standard called Auracast, and it's getting embedded in televisions and phones. So, like, if say you're home and you want to watch something, but you want to wear your headphones, there are some people I know who I only see them with headphones on. It's very common that people wear headphones all day long. You know, and
Even myself.
so there you go. There you go, But imagine being able to like tie that directly into a video source,
Hmm.
It's gonna be a wild new standard.
Yeah. So this sounds like a major innovation and update on the front for accessibility, perhaps. But have you seen other technology
Yes.
that's rolled out that maybe also has had like a pretty significant impact?
Uh, yeah, there's a bunch. So I think Oracast for deaf and low hearing, like, is definitely a massive improvement that's coming out. Um, if you're in New York City, this is a company called Navalens. You might see things like this on um, on the side walls of this is for like wayfinding, right? So this little icon here, this is a company started in Spain called Navalens,
N A
and they
V I
help.
L E N S. I see it on
Yeah,
Google.
Navilens. So they help with like wayfinding. So imagine if you're like trying to navigate the subway as a blind person, you can use your phone. The you can use your phone, and your phone can identify this little image here from like 50 feet away, and it doesn't
Wow.
have to be directly on it. And then it could help give you guidance in terms of like where and how to navigate within this specific space.
I see. It kind of looks like a QR code.
Yeah, it's built on a concept around QR, but it's kind of taking QR to the next level.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going to make it easier, for lot. I mean, and then just AI in general, general AI is really great, in helping people navigate, the world.
Definitely. Wow. So this looks like it's already deployed. This Navi
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's all in. If you go New York City subways, all through Barcelona, it has a very large footprint, and it's already, it's already deployed in a lot of areas.
right? That's incredible. This is really good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. All these little things really, are the digital curb cuts that are coming into our lives. I actually saw, a very large consumer goods company that's thinking of deploying this on all their packaging, right? So
Hmm.
imagine if you're like ever go into a supermarket and you're like, I'm just looking for this one product. Where do I have, the supermarket wants you to go through all the lanes, and try to find it. Imagine doing it being blind or having low vision,
Hmm.
think of like holding your phone up in that aisle and just being like, is this where, mayonnaise is that I want, And then it says, yes, go down 50 feet. It's on the third shelf from the bottom, right? Because your phone picks up this little Navi sign.
Wow. So
So
I
it's
when
obviously has good use for folks, but it can be beneficial to everybody.
something when you held that card up and I'm looking at the navilens.com. So each one of those codes
Yeah.
is actually different. It's not it, and it basically has
Oh, it's
information
yeah.
embedded into it.
That's
Oh
correct.
wow.
That's exactly right. Yeah, just like a QR code, each QR code is different, right? And can tell you anything from like a menu to like a checkout, right? Each one of those little signals. The benefit of this is you don't have to be right up to it. Like a QR code, you have to put your phone right onto this. This, you could be like 20 feet, 30 feet away from it, and it'll still pick it up.
Amazing. Right, and I can see on here it's like if they put their phone up, like this one is like J Street Metro Tech Station, it'll say like ACF line, and also it seems like it may guide you down the steps. I'd imagine too. But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
wow,
yeah, yeah,
this is
yeah. It gives
so
you
good.
all sorts of, yeah, wayfinding, navigation, stuff like that.
This is great. I can imagine that this has
Isn't it
made
crazy?
so much difference in their lives. Oh my goodness.
Isn't it? It's like, and so what's fun about what we get to do is we get to find all these things and help our customers kind of put it together, to create, great inclusive experiences, for their customers.
It's just coming
That's
to
the fun
mind.
part.
But you know that movie Daredevil? In that movie Daredevil, like this guy, he is sighted. There's an accident. He loses his sight, and of course, he has a special ability to get around. But
Right,
that was one movie that I knew that really what made it that had blind people in in awareness a little bit. Because I began to think
right.
about like the challenges involved with that, and in some shows I'd seen them include characters maybe with blindness. Wow.
Right. But a lot of that is true. Like when we're cycling in Central Park, on the south end of the park, there's a lot of like horses, right?
Mm.
And so you can immediately tell when you're getting to the south end of the park because of the smell of the horses. And so it's amazing when you're on the back of the bike with somebody, right, who's blind. Like, you could be on 72nd Street, and maybe the first sign of the horses are on like 67th Street, right? But because of the sound and the smell of them, like they have a hyper awareness, of those
Mm.
types of things.
Absolutely.
So it is kind of true that like if one sense goes away, the other ones do certainly become more heightened.
You've been very generous. I appreciate it. I've
Yeah, I
probably
gotta
taken.
I gotta actually hop to my next call. I could talk to you for hours. You're great. I love you, Trevor. That's awesome.
Love you as well, and it's a good thing you're doing. Thank you, Matt, and have a great day. Okay, we'll talk soon.
Yeah. I look forward to being in touch. No, but thank you. All righty. Take care.